Welcome back to Arts Weekly. This week we went on location to the African American Historical Museum at 436 East Douglas Avenue here in Fort Wayne, and we visited with Rubin Brown, docent and historian for the museum. Here is our interview. We're here at the African American Historical Society and Museum at 436 East Douglas. We're speaking with Mr. Rubin Brown, docent of the museum. Mr. Brown, thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about the African American Museum, how it got its start, and what kind of things that you do here.
Well, the museum was a creation of Mrs. Stith and a concerned group of people who wanted to see this history preserved.
And that's Hannah Stith.
That's Hannah Stith. And she had been a teacher in the Fort Wayne Community School for about 36 years, and a lot of the kids in this community had her, and she was a spark plug of getting it going. They, along with Mrs. Fairchild at the Allen County Historical Society, and they were interested in, she suggested that we start an African American Historical Society to preserve and protect all the collections that Miss Stith had. And she had a history on the AME Church, on Fort Wayne, on the cemetery, which is section 14 of the Lindenwood Cemetery. And
you're here in a beautiful old building. It must be at least 100 years old at 436 East Douglas. Tell us how you arrived here and why the museum is here.
Well, this neighborhood is the most historical of all the African American neighborhoods in the city of Fort Wayne, and this house was used in the early 20s, and then really in the 40s and 50s when the Phyllis Wheatley Center moved. It had two other houses. It moved to the Douglas Street from Wallace Street, and then it moved from across the street to here in about the 1920s, 25s.
So the house actually has a lot of historical significance.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a part of the black community, African American community here in Fort Wayne for a very, very long time. So it's very, very fitting that that it belongs here. You know, we're in one of my favorite rooms. It's the African Village Room, with all sorts of masks and artifacts and different musical instruments. Tell us a little bit about this room and why it's so special.
Well, this room is the second room you come to. The first room is the Coming to America, and that delineates our voyage to this country. This room is that the Africans are looking back and they're remembering what their village looked like. So we tried to create an image to get people, to kind of ease people into this history. And we have to talk about our African roots. We talk about some mass, and the mass has three functions. They are blessings, rite of passage, and funeral. They're called spirit mass. And all around the room we try to delineate the meaning behind it. Blessing mass we don't have, but we have the rite of passage mass. This is a rite of passage mass.
And you have, it seems like an enormously fun place for a child to be in, because you have musical instruments and all sorts of interesting things that were, but you really start at the beginning of the African culture before
it was disturbed.
Before it was disturbed and people came here to America.
And we try to delineate and talk about the meaning of the drums, how the drums were used for messages and for dance, the string instruments, those types of things. The mass, tell stories.
Okay, you also have a very interesting room in the museum, the Civil Rights Room, where you cover the civil rights movement here in the United States, starting in the 1950s, perhaps a little bit earlier. There's one picture in particular that is very, very interesting. It involves the sit-in at the lunch counters in Woolworths in the 50s and the 60s, where there's a sign that says, "We do not cater to colored people." Tell us a little bit about that picture and your experience with it.
Well, that's an interesting. It's my first noticing of this movement in 1960 at North Carolina A&T College, and there were four gentlemen who decided to sit in the Woolworth lunch counter and order some food. Ironically, I don't know whether they was aware of it. They expected to get kicked out and not served, but I don't think they expected to get beat up. And that beating was captured on television. And I think that sparked about 400 the next week and about 1,500 at the end of the year of sit-ins. And now the sit-ins had been used by CORE and threatened by A. Philip Randolph, but that's
right.
pretty much the start of the...
And what year was that?
That was 1960.
That was 1960. Another picture and another exhibit here at the museum involves Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
What is the significance of Birmingham?
Well, Birmingham was considered to be the most segregated city in the country, and Dr. King and Shuttlesworth had vowed that they was going to bring segregation to its knees in Birmingham, and so it was a clash between the segregationists and the civil rights movement. Bull Connor had decided he was going to defend his cities with dogs and hoses.
And he was the police chief at the time?
He was the police chief, the commissioner, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his doing then. And that was the weekend of Good Friday. And of course, Dr. King writes his famous letters from the jail. He was arrested.
Right. Dr. King gets arrested and writes the letter from the Birmingham jail.
Yeah, now that was a response to 8 clergymen from Birmingham saying that his presence there was unwise and untimely, and his action was basically wrong.
Mm-hmm. From the other religious leaders are telling him this, and this is his response to them, which really becomes sort of the rallying cry for King for the next 5 years until he's assassinated, because Birmingham is in 63, correct?
Right. It's in April 16th through about April 12th through.
Right.
16th.
What's the significance of doing the Birmingham protests around Easter?
Well, you remember the bus boycott was done around Christmas,
and that was in 1955
in
Montgomery, Alabama.
In Montgomery, and that created a tension, and he talks about that in the letter to Birmingham jail. The tension is to improve situation in the same way that Socrates sought to create a tension in the mind that created change. And he said that they had tried to negotiate, no one listened to him, so he was going to create this tension.
And so it was essentially the economic boycott, both in Montgomery in 1955 and Birmingham in 1963, that provoked change.
Yeah, well, yes. Most people did the 1955, African Americans was 75% of the ridership of the bus. Now, looking at that in another way, you could say that it was every dollar spent, 75 cents came from African Americans, and their action, their disrespect to African American riders, making them sit in the bus, no drivers, and that was their thing. And then that tension, and then in Birmingham, that tension eased the problem, because he created the same thing at Easter, the second most important shopping day, particularly for African Americans.
Well, that's just a wonderful piece of history that you can learn right here at the museum. But there's another part of history, African American history, about Fort Wayne that one can learn right here. Tell us a little bit about some of the sports stars that came from Fort Wayne, and particularly Johnny Bright. Who was Johnny Bright? Johnny
Bright was an amazing young man who was gifted. He could jump. He was a pole vault in high school. He went to Central. He played on the basketball team. And after his graduation, no one recruited him. He ended up at Michigan State, and he left Michigan State. It was too big. He ended up at Drake University, and they was ushering in the wishbone. I mean, I'm sorry, the T.
But he was really one of the great sports stars.
Oh yes.
And he got hurt early in his intentionally.
That's called the incident, the Johnny Bright incident. He was punched, and they brought on their face masks. And the school and the league said that it wasn't intention, and that caused him not to go to the pros. He said they tried to hurt him. He went to Canada. But he led the nation 2 years in a row.
He was perhaps the greatest football player that ever came. Not to take anything away from Rod Woodson, and I know that you feature his jersey as well here. Everybody knows that Rod is one of the great athletes to come out of Fort Wayne. But you also have others.
Yeah, but again, Rod Woodson, we were the first to have a display on Rod Woodson. And we have some artifacts from high school, Purdue, and his stints in the pros.
Now this museum at 436 East Douglas is really at the heart of what used to be, perhaps still is, the African American community here. Tell us a little bit about what this community used to be just east of Lafayette.
Well, this was the first really urban black community. Most blacks lived in here. The churches, the AME Church, the Baptist churches, particularly Mount Olive, and Greater Mount Olive, which became the Union Baptist Church, and the rudiments of that, the building is gone, but you can still see where the church is over on Drexel.
Central High School down here.
Central High School. All the entertainment was here.
What used to be Central High School.
Yes, indeed. All the entertainment was here. The Elks, the Masonic Lodge, they had eating places. You could get the best barbecue in the world.
Well, this is one of the most interesting museums, I think, in Fort Wayne. I really think you guys are doing a great job. Encourage everybody to come down here. It's a great learning opportunity about our recent American and past American history. So thank you, Mr. Brown, very much for coming on to Arts Weekly.
We appreciate you having us. We love to tell our story.
Thank you. For more information about the African American Historical Museum, you can visit myblackinfo.com/African American FW. Missed us on PBS on Sundays? You can also check us out on the internet. Arts Weekly can be seen on YouTube and Facebook, and you can also follow us on Twitter. As always, Arts Weekly can be seen Tuesday through Thursday on College Access Television. I'm Chuck O'Connor. Thanks for tuning in to Arts Weekly. Join me next week with guest Deb Washler from ArtLink and J.L. Nave from the Fort Wayne Philharmonic. See you then.